great pleasure, gives me great pleasure to hand the meeting over to Howard, who's come along all the way from America. Howard, meeting's all yours. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you all for coming. All of my friends here, those of you who come to the workshop and follow me around. And of course, of all, the most important person to me is the heart of my hearts, my heart of my heart, and my muse, Kathy is here. I love you, sweetheart. Always a lot easier to talk when I can see you in the corner. And I want to congratulate everyone who's counting days here or weeks here. Just keep coming and come to meetings like this. Come to meetings that are focused on the book. And what I wanted to talk about was, I think it's ironic, if nothing else, that, we want to talk to the newcomer when he's hopeless and he's got the desperation of a drowning man and he's got quicksand surrounding him on all sides. And then what do? We take 6 to 10 months to take him through the first 164 pages of the book. It doesn't make any sense. There's a window of opportunity that every newcomer has, and everyone has it. And we don't know how long it's going to stay open, how fast it's going to close. But one thing is for sure, it is in movement. From the first day that you stay sober, there is that window closing, and that obsession is going to return. And if we take 6 to 10 months to take you through the first 164 pages, it's no wonder so many people go out. So what we had to do is come up with a different way to approach this. I believe that we need to qualify and triage. Most important, triage the newcomer. I have a lot of people asking me to take them through the book who have time. They are looking for maybe a new experience. But the people who come to me who are brand new, who are in a sense bleeding out, they need a much faster approach. I've got to get that guy or that female, whoever it is, I got to get that guy through the inventory, through the amends, through the 12th step, get them sponsoring people, all within a matter of hours or weeks, depending on how many times we can get together. And then afterwards, we have the luxury of time to go through the book word for word, line by line. Those of you who know me know that I'm a big believer in that. That's what I've been doing for 15 years or so, is that big book study where we go word for word, line by line. And I'm not walking around away from that. I still think that's critical. But everybody people need a different approach. So I want to just get started. I forgot to mention this. I always like to start with the set aside prayer, kind of get me focused. Dear God, please set aside everything I think I know about myself, my disease, the big book, and the 12 steps. Everything I think I know about the program, the fellowship, all spiritual terms, and especially about you, God, so I may have an open mind and a new experience. Please help me see the truth. Amen. I'm going to give you a situation, maybe a little bit graphic. I don't mean to nauseate anybody, but if your doctor told you that you had this big malignant tumor latched on to your cerebral cortex, and then suggested as a method of treatment, dietary improvements, vitamin supplements, and exercise. If your doctor recommended that, the first thing you would do is go find another doctor. Without a doubt, go find another doctor. Yet that's exactly what the unanimous fellowships are doing with new people when they come in. We suggest 90 meetings in 90 days. We give them a phone list, a bunch of other what Kathy and I call disease management tactics that are valuable, but don't come anywhere near approaching the root of the problem. For the chronic alcoholic, the real alcoholic of the desperate variety, who is going down and needs that air like a drowning man, that person needs aggressive treatment right away. Otherwise, what we're doing with them is hospice care, and that's not going to work. It's not going to work. So what I'd like to do is I'm going to kind of speed you through what I would be doing with somebody who is bleeding out, as far as I'm concerned. And this is the first time I've really conducted like a workshop on it. I've taken people through it. I've worked with people. There are a couple of people here today who are currently involved in this process. But this is the first time I've actually tried to workshop it. And let's see how it turns out. What I think I like to do is on page 58 is where How It Works begins. And there's a line that says, if you decided you want what we have and are willing to go to any length to get it, then you're ready to take certain steps. Great. What does that mean? What does taking certain steps mean? Well, in the context of where it is in the book, it means these steps that we're about to lay out, that are the steps we took to recover. So it talks about those 12 steps on the wall, going to any lengths for that. Not going to any lengths like going out in a blizzard to go to a meeting. That's not what we're talking about. We're talking about going to any lengths in terms of working these steps. But when I work with my newcomers, I've got an additional list of things that I ask them to see how willing they are to go to any lengths. I've got a couple other questions to ask them. And let me see if I can get it put up here. There's a lot of these, so let me see if I can get this done quickly. Just bear with me a moment. All right, let me see if I can get you to see this. There we go. Okay. Are you willing to go to any lengths? Meaning, are you willing to be qualified? To let me qualify you. There are questions I'm going to ask to qualify you, because believe it or not, some people do get here by mistake. Okay. But once I qualify you, are you willing to take the steps quickly? And don't believe anybody who says, take your time, this isn't a race. Yes, it is a race. You're fighting against time. That window of that obsession returning is moving constantly. It is a race against time. And are you willing to go to specific meetings early on? I will give you a list of meetings, and thank God for Zoom, because every meeting I can give you is a big book meeting. It's focused on this process. So I'm going to ask you for the initial period to go to just these meetings that I'm asking that are on this list. And I don't want to put the list up and take time. Suffice to say that they all are book-related meetings. The next is I'm going to ask you to focus only on the big book. Only. Get rid of the 12 and 12, put that aside. Burn Living Sober if you still have it. Get rid of it. It's only going to create more problems at any point. But for now, I want you to focus on just the big book and the big book only. And are you willing to be completely honest with me? I'm talking about sex and checks. I'm talking about what medications are you on? You need to be honest with me about all of these things. Are you willing to take a service commitment at some meeting right away? Right away. Between now and the next time we sit and talk, I expect you to have a commitment somewhere. I don't care where it is. It could be at a live meeting. It could be at a meeting here, just doing some readings, some commitment. Are you willing to learn the traditions? Because as soon as I get you through these steps, I'm going to get you through the traditions. We're going to shoot through comes of age, and we're going to go through the traditions. And are you willing to follow meeting etiquette Every meeting has its own particular form of etiquette. So basically, I'm suggesting if you're going to a meeting you've never gone to before, the first time you go, be quiet. Just take it in. It's very embarrassing if every meeting you go to, they go through the ABCs and they get to God could and would if you were sought, and everybody says it, and you're used to doing it, but the meeting you go to, nobody does it, and you're the only one who does it. Kind of embarrassing. So wait till you get the etiquette. That etiquette also applies to how you qualify yourself. If you're at an Alcoholics Anonymous meeting, you better identify yourself as an alcoholic, period. Respect your environment. So those are the things that we're talking about in terms of willing to go to any lengths, okay? And a way that I like to qualify, let me get rid of this, get this out of my way, is I hope you guys have your books handy. Please get your books out. It's going to make a lot more sense if you have them. I don't know if you're going to be able to take notes, but at least you could try. When I say qualify, I'm going to qualify by starting on page 44. There are a couple of questions on page 44, which we will come back to soon. But for right now, the qualifying questions I want to ask are on the first paragraph, 3 or 4 lines down. It says, if when you honestly want to, you find you cannot quit entirely, or if when drinking you have little control over the amount you take, you're probably alcoholic. So I turn those into questions. I ask my prospect, have you been able to quit entirely on your own resources? Have you been able to do that? Do you have any control over the amount you take once you start? Simple qualification. I don't need to do that much more, but starting with those questions. And there are some more questions we're going to ask. I do ask that you have not just the blue book, the 4th edition, but that if you can, go out and get the study version of the big book. I will put up a screen that tells you how to get it. I don't want to take the time to needlessly do that now, but I would be giving you information for how to get the study version. And the study version is the same thing as the big book, only there are blank pages every other page for notes, because we do suggest a lot of notes. Those of you who know me know what I'm talking about. So get the study version if you possibly can. I would be putting up a screen, something like this, that anybody could use to get it. Then we start. First place I like to go to is the title page, the annotated title page. And let me get that up on the screen here. Okay. Okay. The first page, the annotated title page, says the story of how many thousands of men and women have recovered. First page already, we're introducing a new word. I know you may, if you've been around, if you've been to meetings, you've been told not to use that word. Well, use it the right way. The book says to use it, and the book tells us how to use it. On the next page, it gives us some information on that. But what we're being alerted to on this first page is that this book is going to tell us about the chain of events and the manner in which these 1,000 men and women have recovered from alcoholism. It's on the first page, and it's a promise. We start out with the promise. And then we turn to the forward to the first edition. If you've got your book there, just pick that up. I'm not going to put up the page. I don't want to take that time. But the forward to the first edition, in the 4th edition, it's on page XIII. It begins with saying, we of Alcoholics Anonymous are more than 100 men and women who have, and here's your definition, recovered from a seemingly hopeless state of mind and body. We've recovered from that hopeless state. We're not hopeless anymore. The symptoms of our disease are no longer present. That's what recovered means. The symptoms of my disease. I'm not drinking anymore. I'm not missing work anymore. I'm not a source of conflict and confusion to everybody and everything around me. All of those symptoms are gone. That doesn't mean I'm cured. Cured means the disease itself is gone, and that's never the case. My disease is always one bad idea away from waking up the beast, but the symptoms are no longer present, so that means I have recovered. And incidentally, the first sentence in this book, I always hear people misunderstand it. It says, we of Alcoholics Anonymous. They're not talking about us. This is not a we program. When they use terms like we or our or us, Bill is referring to the 100 men and women who have recovered. And how do I know that? Because almost every time he uses the word we, he follows it up with that we're more than the 100 men and women who have recovered. And then he tells us what the point of this book is. He says, to show other alcoholics, to show. We begin here on page XIII, and Bill says, we're going to show you how we recovered. By the time we get to page 152, the verbiage is changed to saying, we have shown you how we have recovered. So between here and page 152, they're going to show how they recovered. They're not going to tell you what to do. They're going to say what they have done. And they're going to show us precisely, not in general terms, specific, exactly in terms and how they have recovered. That's the whole point of this book, is to tell you how they have recovered. I'm going to ask if you have the fourth edition, turn to the back of the forward to the first edition. There's like kind of a half a blank page there. And it's as good a place as any to start to write a few notes down. I'd like you to write down that this is a threefold disease. This is a threefold disease. Too often I hear people say twofold, and they're missing the most important part. The threefold disease, number one, body. The disease of the body, the physical craving. It's represented by the physical craving, and this book addresses it in the doctor's opinion and up to page 23. That's the focus of those pages, doctor's opinion in 23 pages, on the physical part of our disease. But since we can't do anything about it, it doesn't pay to continue talking about it beyond that. So the second part of our disease is the mind. And that's manifested by the mental obsession. And that is dealt with on page 23 to page 43. That's what we're talking about in those pages. And the third part of our disease, and this is the one that always gets overlooked, is our spiritual malady. We have a spiritual malady, this untreated alcoholism, this unmanageability, this being restless and irritable and discontented until we can get the relief that comes at once with that first drink. That's our spiritual malady. That this is not a disease. We're not talking about a problem with alcohol anymore. We're talking about a problem with sobriety. We don't have a problem with alcohol. We got a problem with sobriety. And that's what most of this part of the book is about, which is page 44 to 64, is going to harp on that. But let's start going through the areas that we're talking about. We're going to start with the body, our lack of control, our physical craving, which is, as I said, in doctor's opinion and page 23. And I'm going to start by going to doctor's opinion in the fourth edition, page XXVI. And I'm going to be jumping around, so you got to kind of hang tight. But again, the whole point here is to get through this fast. We're going to be skipping things. We're going to be jumping around. We're going to be focusing on the things we need to focus on to get the bleeding to stop. to get this person through the inventory, to get them through the amends, to get them to the 12-step and sponsor people. That's what our goal is. And if we have to skip some pages and paragraphs, we're going to do that. So I'm starting on page, as I said, in the 4th edition, XXVI. XXVI, let me find it here. Oh, I'm sorry. I apologize. XXVI in the 4th edition. I don't know if I said that or not, but that's where we're starting. And I'm looking at the material between the first letter and what people refer to as the second doctor's opinion letter. It's not. There's no 2 letters. There's 1 letter and 1 statement. So this is Bill's connective tissue between the two. And he started the paragraph that begins with the physician who. I'm jumping down about, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 lines where Bill says that the body of the alcoholic is quite as abnormal as his mind. The body, up until now, it's been thought of as being all in your mind. People telling you you're weak, something morally wrong with you, that it's all up here. If you just tell yourself no, and you just summon up that willpower, you'll be able to stay clean and sober. They don't understand that there is this other component that Bill just mentioned. The body is quite as abnormal. And if you jump to the bottom paragraph that we're still on, it says, but we are sure that our bodies were sickened as well. And here's the key line. In our belief, any picture of the alcoholic which leaves out the physical factor is incomplete. We are talking about a physical illness manifested in the craving, the allergic type reaction, that's craving. And then on the next paragraph, the end of the first line, I want to draw your attention to 6 words. We have an allergy to alcohol. Now, I don't know about anyone else, but when I first heard that, I thought that's the biggest crock of shit I ever heard in my life. How could I possibly be allergic to something I consume in such large quantities? I'm allergic to ragweed and pollen and cat dander. And if I'm around it just a little bit, I have an immediate physical reaction. I sneeze, I sniffle, I wheeze, I tear. There are 108 people in this room today. I'll bet there are way over 100 people with allergies that you eat a strawberry and you break out in hives. You eat a peanut and your tongue could swell up. These are physical reactions to the manifestation of an allergy. Well, how does that even, I never had any of those symptoms when I drank and I drug. So I did what I was told to do, and this is what I'm going to suggest the newcomer do, is let's define our terms. What does allergy mean? Not what do you think it means? What does the dictionary say it means? And you may want to write it down because it's important. An allergy is defined as a body's abnormal reaction to any food, substance, or chemical. The most important word there is abnormal. Most people have a few drinks, a few lines, a few hits on whatever's going around, and at some point they say, no thanks, I got to drive, or I'm going to get sick, or they say the strangest words in the English language. I don't need any more. I'm right where I want to be. Well, I don't know about anybody else, but I always drank and drug with the expectation of arriving right where I want to be if I only had a little bit more, or maybe just one more, or maybe just 1 or 2 more. It was always about more. So if the normal reaction is to say no at some point, and I'm not able to do that, then I have an abnormal reaction, an allergic type reaction. And my allergy shows itself in the craving. That once I start, I cannot stop. That is what the craving means to me. Let's turn to page XXVII, which is the next page in the doctor's opinion. And I want to draw your attention to the last word on the page and the first word on the next page. Those words are physical craving. Anytime you see the word craving in this book, I want you to think of that. Physical means craving. I've been to meetings, people say, I've been craving a drink all day today. No, you haven't. In the context of the big book, you've been thinking about it, maybe obsessing about it. How far it's gone, I don't know, but you haven't been craving. You can't crave it until it's in you. Craving means the physical reaction to the ingestion of alcohol. So anytime you see craving in this book, we're talking about the physical reaction. And anytime we talk about the physical reaction, we're talking about craving. So let me continue here on the next page, XXVIII. I want to try and make this a little quicker as possible. Let me move this along a little faster. Page XXVIII in the fourth edition, XXVIII. Why can't I find it here? Oh, there it is. Okay. First full paragraph. I apologize. I'm trying to save time and I'm blowing time here. We believe, this is the first full paragraph, we believe, and so suggested a few years ago, that the action of alcohol on these chronic alcoholics, chronic, it's habitual, it never goes away, it's always there. That the action of alcohol on these chronic alcoholics is a manifestation of an allergy. And that the phenomenon of craving, and it's no longer a phenomenon, phenomenon is defined as an observable but unexplainable fact. Well, we can explain it now. We know metabolically how we assimilate alcohol. Couldn't care less. It has no bearing on my recovery at all. I don't care about it. I'm allergic to, say, like I said, other things, and I don't care how my body reacts to it. I just know I have to avoid it. So he's saying that the phenomenon of craving is limited to this class and never, never occurs in the average temperate drinker or the normal drinker. These allergic types can never safely use, and please underline this, alcohol in any form at all. Now, I'm sure I'm going to make a lot of friends here when I tell you this, that I view that in a very broad, very liberal sense. Alcohol in any form, to me, I swallow it, I drink it, I snort it, I smoke it, I shoot it, I shove it. It's any chemical, liquid, leaf, powder, pill, any chemical I take that changes my perception of me in reality is, to me, alcohol in one form or another. Bill Wilson used to call alcohol the narcotic alcohol. Not too far off, but to me, it's any of those chemicals. And I hope this isn't too much of a shock to some people here, but both of our founders, Bill Wilson and Dr. Bob, were cross-addicted. They were addicted to pills as well as alcohol. And I don't want to get too deep into that. We can talk about it some other time. But alcohol in any form. And if you want to get really strict about it, just say alcohol in any form, like, say, NyQuil, mouthwash, hair conditioner, anything that contains any trace of alcohol, you may want to stay away from. Not that you're going to necessarily start drinking that, although who knows, you never know. It sets off a line of thinking. Maybe the smell reminds us. Maybe just knowing it's in there reminds us. So probably a good idea to avoid that stuff. So let's continue with bottom of the page. Men and women drink essentially because they like the effect produced by alcohol. Not the taste, the effect. When I got that right blend of chemicals in me, I'll give you Bill's example. when Bill first discovered what alcohol could do for him. He said, someone handed me a Bronx cocktail and I drank it. And the entire face of the universe instantly changed. I was part of life at last. I was released from this gnawing sense of inferiority. And that's exactly how I felt. I could be outgoing. I could tell jokes. I could be the life of the party. I could talk to and perform with women, none of which was I ever able to do before. Alcohol made that possible. I liked that effect. And one of the definitions of effect is change. I liked that change that it produced in me. So continuing, it says, the sensation is so elusive that while they admit it's injurious, they cannot after a time differentiate the true from the false. To them, their alcoholic life seems the only normal one. And if we go to the next page, bottom of the page, I do not hold with those who believe that alcoholism is entirely a problem of mental control, willpower, if you will. I've had many men who had, for example, worked a period of months on some problem or business deal which was to be settled on a certain date favorable to them. They took a drink, meaning they gave into the obsession. And then what does it say on the next line? The phenomenon of craving at once became paramount. We don't have a drinking problem. We have a sober problem. We have a sober problem. Let's see if we can go to the next page. Second paragraph up from the bottom. After Dr. Silkworth explains various types of alcoholics, and I don't want to waste time in going through all of those. I want to make the point he's trying to make, emphasize the point he's trying to make. He says, all these and many others have one symptom in common. They cannot start drinking without developing the phenomenon of craving. If everybody in this room started drinking right now, some people would be up dancing. Some people would be telling jokes. Some people would be up hitting on the members of the opposite or same sex. Sure as shit, there'd be some guys in the corner starting a fight. Other guys would be just sitting at the bar, stewing in their drink, which would probably be me, just getting sullen and more depressed. We would all react differently to alcohol. But there's one thing, every one of the 107 people in this room do the same. We go looking for the next drink. It may have a different effect on every one of us, but the one thing that we all do is go looking for that next one. Before we even finish the first one, at least in my case, we all go looking for that next drink. And he says this phenomenon, as we have suggested, may be the manifestation of an allergy, which differentiates these people and sets them apart as a distinct entity. It has never been by any treatment with which we are permanently eradicated. The only relief is entire abstinence, no compromise, no middle ground. I'm going to jump ahead here because I do see that we're getting, where am I? Yeah, about a little bit halfway. Let's jump to page 17. There is a solution. I'm going to start at the beginning, the first two paragraphs. We of Alcoholics Anonymous know thousands of men and women who were once just as hopeless as Bill. Nearly all have recovered. They've solved the drink problem. We are average Americans, average people. All sections of this world and many of its occupations are represented, as well as many political, economic, social, and religious backgrounds. We are people who normally would not mix, but there exists among us a fellowship, a friendliness, an understanding, which is incredibly wonderful. A few lines down from there, he says that it's camaraderie, joyousness, democracy. So Bill is painting a very favorable picture of fellowship. He's praising the fellowship. This is what we find at the fellowship. This is what brings us back time and time again. But he's also going to issue a word of warning here. because it's not enough. Going down a few lines, it says the feeling of having shared in a common peril, and common peril represents our fellowship, our craving. We have shared in this allergy and the obsession. That's what brings us together. We share a common peril that brings us together in a fellowship. But it is only one element of the cement which binds us. That in itself would never have held us together as we are now joined. So he's giving us a warning here that fellowship alone is insufficient. That don't drink and go to meetings if that's all you do is insufficient. He continues to say, the tremendous fact for every one of us is we've discovered a common solution. The steps, the 12 steps. We have a way out on which we can absolutely agree. There's the formula. Common peril, fellowship, over common solution, the steps, mixed together are the cement which binds us together. If we are to recover, we must have fellowship and steps. One without the other is a half measure. And we hear that expression repeated at the beginning of every meeting, but maybe we don't know what they mean. Half measures, fellowship without steps, steps without fellowship. Those are half measures. Let's bring us up to the mind part of it, the mental obsession on page 22. The mental factor of our malady is this obsession. And I think before we get too deep into it, like everything else, we need to define our terms. So what does obsession mean? Obsession is defined as a thought which overcomes all thoughts to the contrary. A thought that overcomes all thoughts to the contrary, in spite of what we know, in spite of what we've been through, in spite of what we've experienced, we still somehow manage to convince ourselves that this time it'll be different. That thought, repeated over and over and over, becomes an obsession. And eventually that obsession wins out and convinces us to take that first drink. And once we take that first drink, game on, because now we've triggered the body's reaction. It's no longer a question of the mental obsession. It's the body's reaction. On page 22, paragraph all the way at the bottom, 3 or 4 lines up from the bottom. Once he takes any alcohol, whatever, into his system, something happens, both in the bodily, which is the craving, and the mental, which is the obsession sense, which makes it virtually impossible for him to stop because it's become physical. We don't have trouble stopping because of the obsession. We have trouble staying stopped because of the obsession. But once we give into the obsession, it becomes physical. It's all about the body's reaction. Let's going to jump to page 24. Okay. Second paragraph, the famous italics paragraph. The fact is that most alcoholics, for reasons yet obscure, and P.S., they're still obscure. This book was written in 1939, and he used that term. It was obscure then. It's still obscure today. Yet obscure have lost the power of choice in drink. Please notice the word in. It doesn't say when drinking. It says in drink. And what that means is I've lost the power to choose to stop once I start because of the allergy. And I've lost the power to choose not to start because of the mental obsession. That is why, and I'm talking to my newcomer here, good intentions, firm resolve, sincere desires, commitments, writing it in the Bible, are insufficient. Left to our own devices, we will inevitably drink again. Making a decision to not drink is not an adequate defense against the first drink. And we're going to hear that in a moment. Continuing in this paragraph, he says, we are unable at certain times, and underline at certain times, because we can't be fooled by the fact that sometimes we're able to recall with sufficient weight what happens every time we do it, and we don't do it. But that's not a permanent solution. Fear will sober you for a bit. We're unable at certain times to bring into our consciousness with sufficient force the memory of the suffering and humiliation of even a week or a month ago. We are without defense against the first drink. I'm going to jump ahead here to page 30, more about alcoholism. Most of us have been unwilling to admit we were real alcoholics. Anytime you see the word real alcoholics in this book, he means allergy, obsession. Try and key words like physical means craving. When he says real alcoholic, he means you got an allergy, you got an obsession. No person likes to think he's bodily and mentally different from his fellows. Therefore, it's surprising that our drinking careers have been characterized by countless vain attempts to prove we could drink like other people. And we're going to jump to the next paragraph. We learned that we had to fully concede to our innermost self that we were alcoholics. This is the first step in recovery. Please notice he doesn't say surrender. I'm not sure if you're aware of this, but you know the word surrender doesn't appear anywhere in the first 164 pages of this book. Nowhere. The word surrender doesn't appear anywhere in the first 164 pages. Bill uses other words like he just did, concede. And what concede means is absolute, total, unconditional surrender. There's no way back from concession. Concession is it's over. Humpty Dumpty has fallen, he's broken, that's it. There's no putting it back together again. That's the illusion that has to be smashed, incidentally, in the rest of the sentence. And what I want to do is jump ahead now back to page 44, because we just read something about the first step. Now we're going to take it. Remember, we read the about third or fourth line down, if when you honestly want to, and we turn those things into questions. So you should have already written somewhere on this page 2 questions. Have I been able to quit entirely on my own resources? Do I have any control over the amount I take once I start? Those are the questions I'm going to be asking my prospect. Have you been able to quit entirely on your own accord? Have you any control over the amount you take once you start? If that's the case, now we can go back to page 30 and make the statement here. Have you conceded to your innermost self that you are alcoholic? If the answer is yes, congratulations, you're done with the first step. It's time to move on. You've already just taken that first step. It is time to get moving. Let's turn to page 45, because now we're going to talk about lack of power. We've talked about allergy, obsession, talk about lack of power. First paragraph, full paragraph, lack of power. That was our dilemma. Please notice power in that case is lowercase. When you see power capitalized, power means God. When you see power in the lowercase, power means strength. The same word means two different things based on whether you capitalize it or not. So in this case, lack of strength is our dilemma. We had to find a power, a strength, by which we could live, and it had to be a, capital P, a power greater than ourselves, obviously, but where and how were we to find this power? Well, that's exactly what this book is about. Its main purpose is to enable you to find a power greater than yourself, which will solve your problem. And I'm going to jump a little farther ahead here to page 47. I'm sorry, 46, right in the middle. We found, this is the middle paragraph that begins with, yes, we have agnostic temperament. It sets the groundwork for step 2. We have found that as soon as we were able to lay aside prejudice, this is how we find God. Number 1, lay aside prejudice and express a willingness to believe. Number 2, willingness to believe. And then if you jump down to the bottom of the page, 4 lines up from the bottom, you'll see the words seek him. That's number 3. This is how you find God. Lay aside prejudice. Doesn't say abandon it. Just take it and leave it over here. You can always keep an eye on it, but lay aside prejudice. Be willing and seek, which means take action. And if we do those things, then we're ready to take the step on page 47, right in the middle. It says we needed to ask ourselves but one short question. And Sally, it's one question. You know, the Hazelton Guide has about 100 questions for this. The NA Step Working Guide, I think, has 79 questions for this. It's got 119 questions for the first step. We have one question for the second step, and this is it. We needed to ask ourselves but one short question. Do I now believe, or am I willing to believe, that there's a power greater than myself? Notice the word God isn't there. In the second step, it doesn't necessarily say God. It's talking about a power greater than ourselves that can do for us what we couldn't do for ourselves. So this is where I ask the prospect that question. Do you now believe? Or are you willing to believe? That's all we need to know. Congratulations, you're done with the second step. Let's jump ahead to covering unmanageability, the spiritual malady, that last part of our disease. Turn to page 51. I'm keeping an eye on the time, Gordon. Page, what did I say, 51? Yes, 3rd line down. Leaving aside the drink question, they tell why living was so unsatisfactory. So here we are on page 51. We have finished with the physical allergy. There's 23 pages. We've now gotten past the mental obsession. So Bill is now saying, putting aside drinking, period. We're not drinking anymore. We are, you want to say sober, sobriety, whatever word, we have not taken more than the second step. We haven't taken the 3rd, the 4th. We are between the 2nd and the 3rd step. And Bill is saying, life still sucks, doesn't it? Right? I don't know about anyone else, but I thought all I had to do was stop drinking and everything would fall into place. Everything would be great. That would be it. But that's not the case. That's not the case. Once I stop drinking and I look objectively at my life, I'm going to find that it sounds like this. Turn to page 52, right in the middle. And you may want to number these things, because if time allows, we'll come back to it, but I don't think we will. 3rd line down, 1, we were having trouble with personal relationships. Anyone identify with that in the beginning? Number 2, we couldn't control our emotional natures. Number 3, we're a prey to misery and depression. 4, we couldn't make a living. 5, we had a feeling of uselessness. 6, we were full of fear. 7, we were unhappy. 8, we couldn't seem to be of real help to other people. And here's a part that very often gets overlooked. The question that Bill poses: was not a basic solution of these bedevilments more important than ... Leave it blank, whatever the distraction of your choice is. Bill chose to say watching newsreels of lunar flight because that's what he liked to do. What do you like to do to kill time so that you don't have to work on your program? How about catching up on Game of Thrones, watching 7 years of Game of Thrones? You could forget the 7th year, but be that as it may. How about catching up 10 years on The Walking Dead? How about going to 3 or 4 Zoom meetings every night? Now you're going to tell yourself that's the good thing to do because I'm going to meetings, but it's a bit excessive if you're doing that in place of these things we just read. If your life is like the things we just read, Walking Dead, Game of Thrones will all be here. Zoom will all be here later. You may not. So isn't it more important to work on those things? That's what we're talking about in the bedevilments, is that's what our life is like after the second step. And we don't want it to be like that anymore. So let's turn to page 62. And I'm skipping things that I wouldn't ordinarily skip, but we're running out of time. First full paragraph: selfishness, self-centeredness. That we think is the root of our troubles. The root is the part of the plant that feeds the rest of the plant. If our troubles are all coming from selfishness, then driven by 100 forms of fear, self-delusion, self-seeking, self-pity, what happens when we make a decision based on those things? When we make a decision based on self, well, Bill tells us, we step on the toes of our fellows and they retaliate. You don't want me forcing my will on you. So I step on your toes and you push back. Hey, get out of here. I'm not going to do that. See, the problem with self-will is everyone's got it. And you don't want me to force my will on you any more than I want you to force yours on me. So if I try to do that, you're going to retaliate. What happens when you retaliate? I retaliate. I get angry. I get fearful. I act in a harmful manner. Notice: fear, anger, harm. I get like that. I hurt other people. I get resentful. And when I'm resentful, I drink and I drug. So the root of my problems is not the drinking and the drugging. The root of my problems is a selfish thought that sets in motion this chain of events that ends with my drinking and drugging, which is why I have to look at those things in my 4th step. So let's turn to page 63. Right in the middle of the page, we're going to take step 3 together. God, I offer myself to thee to build with me and do with me as thou wilt. Relieve me of the bondage of self that I may better do thy will. Take away my difficulties that victory over them may bear witness to those I would help of thy power, thy love, and thy way of life. May I do thy will always. Congratulations, you've just taken the 3rd step. Bottom of the page tells us what we do now. Next, we launched out on a course of vigorous action. And that's not step 4, incidentally. The plan of vigorous action is 4 through 9. The first step of which is personal housekeeping, which is step 4. But launched means something you're doing really fast. Someone once told me, it was a pilot, that when pilots use the term launched, It means to go from 0 to 200 miles an hour in a matter of feet. That's launching. Kathy has a beautiful way of explaining launching. It's like being on that launch pad at Cape Canaveral here, and the astronauts are all strapped in and they've got their belts and they're locked in their seat. And those belts that are holding them in place, those are the hands of God. But that's what we have to do, is launch out and know that we're in the hands of our Creator. And I'm going to skip ahead to page 64. Bottom of the page. Resentment is the #1 offender. Once again, let's define our terms. Resentment means to refeel. Resentment doesn't mean anger. I hear too many meetings, the topic is resentments, and all people talk about is anger. Resentment is made up of angers, made up of fears, made up of harms that we've done. Because resentment means to refeel something. We are refeeling our angers. We are refeeling our fears. We are refeeling the harms that we've done. So resentment, all of those things, is the #1 offender. And later on in this paragraph, Bill tells us the first assignment, and again, I'm skipping because I got about 4, maybe 10 minutes to go. First assignment, make a list of people, principles, and institutions with whom you are angry. Make a list of them. Let me see if I can get you the handout that we use. 39. I don't know if you guys can see that. Can you? Let me try and bring it up one more time, because it doesn't look like it's letting me bring this thing up. I'm going to give this one more chance, and then we're going to abandon that. Here we go. This is just a prompt sheet. I've never met an alcoholic who didn't know exactly who he was angry at. So we know the people we're angry at, right? Institutions is also pretty easy. The IRS, the correctional system, any government agency, the police, the church, political parties, rehabs, step study workshops. But principles takes a little bit more work. Principles is not just, say, like religious dogma, the 10 Commandments, life after death. It's also some of the things that are drilled into our heads as we grow up that cause us anger and confusion. For example, real men don't cry. One of my guys had that on his list because every time he cried, even as early as he could remember, he got slapped. And his father said, real men don't cry, stop crying. My parents taught me that never strike another human being in anger. And I did that. I never fought back. I was always the smallest kid in class. I had braces and glasses in the 2nd grade. I was a chubby little kid. I got picked on, and I never fought back. And it caused me enormous confusion and conflict because I'm doing what my parents said to do, but I'm feeling wrong about it. That's one of them. One of my guys put on his list, all men are created equal. He's Black. That's not his experience. So whenever he hears it, he gets angry. So what we're starting out to do here is make a list of any of these things, just a simple list of people, principles, and institutions with whom you're angry. Okay? And then we're going to do this. Number 40. All right, let's see if you could see this one. This is the 5-column anger grid. that Joe and Charlie started using, and I've been using it ever since. There we go. Okay. Get a notebook. Open it up to any page that has the right and the left on it. The first 3 columns on the left are, who am I angry at? What's the cause? Brief, bullet points. This is not a lengthy story. I said this, he did that, I did this, he did. No. What's simple? I'm angry. I'm angry at this guy. Why? He embarrassed me in front of my family. I'm angry at this guy because he fired me. I'm angry at this person because they rejected me. Whatever it is, simple term, buzzwords. Third column, and this is where it gets to be a little dicey. You got to put some thought into this. What basic instincts of mine was hurt or threatened? Oh, I can't. I got to get this the right way. There we go. What basic instinct was hurt or threatened by what that person did? Our basic instincts are God-given survival mechanisms. We need them, but they get out of proportion. They get super sensitized. So sometimes we get angry because you stepped on my self-esteem. You affected my self-esteem. You stepped on my pride. How about my ambitions, my ability to accomplish tasks? What basic instinct? I learned that I can't be angry if you didn't threaten or hurt one of my basic instincts, my security instincts, my relationship instincts. What did you hurt? And then we looked at things from an entirely different angle. The first 3 columns are what they did. The second last 2 columns are what I did. What did I do? What mistakes did I make, if anything, to set in motion this train of events that led me to having the resentment? Now, that's a 2-part question. What part did I play? What mistake did I make in the initial event? But once it was over, I had a cousin who abused me between the ages of 9 and 14. But when I was 14, he stopped doing it. And I was angry at him for 40 years over it. He wasn't doing it to me anymore. I was doing it to me. So I was causing the resentment. I was causing it because I was harboring it. I allowed it. I felt victim by it. I had expectations about it. I had built walls. I was irresponsible. I lied. I lacked prayer. What part did I play in the resentment of this? And then the 5th column, here's the money column. Where had I been? What defect came out here? These are the defects of character that we're going to talk about in the 5th step. These are our shortcomings. I'm sorry, our 6th step, the shortcomings in the 7th step. They all mean the same thing. What defect came out as a result of this? Very simple to do. You don't have to spend a lot of time on this. Just get the ones that count. You can always come back and do more later. Get the ones that come to mind now, and then you could move on. So you finish your angers list, okay? And then we do we take a fears inventory. And if you turn to page 68, you'll see it's an entirely different process than what we just went through. Let me get it here for you. Fears list. 41. Okay. You should be able to see this in just about a moment. Okay. On page 68, basically, Bill gives us 3 directions. Our fears list are very simple. First of all, he says we reviewed them thoroughly. We put them on paper. List them. What are you afraid of? I'm afraid of confrontation. I'm afraid of intimacy. I'm afraid of dying. I'm afraid of cancer. Whatever. Whatever you're afraid of, write down what you're afraid of. The second question, he says, is we ask ourselves why we had them. And the beautiful thing about this is Bill answers the question. He gives us the answer. He says it was because self-reliance failed us. Self-reliance was good, but it didn't go far enough. Fear, we were relying too much on ourselves. Here it is. We were relying on our limited resources instead of God's infinite powers. If we want relief, we have to ask, which brings us to the third part of this inventory, is once we know what we're afraid of, and we know it's because we relied on self, then the way we begin to outgrow it is given at the bottom of the page, where he says, we earnestly ask God to remove our fear of whatever it is, intimacy, whatever, and direct our attention to what he would have us be. What would he have us be? Courageous. At all times, courageous. We've all heard the expression, walk through the fears. Well, you're not walking through it alone anymore. You've tapped into a source of unlimited power. So we ask God to help us be courageous and walk through that fear, whatever it is. And then Bill says that once we commence to outgrow fear, that doesn't mean we've outgrown it. It means it's a process. We will work more on it in the seventh step. But immediately, once we start to bring God into the conversation, we begin the process of outgrowing fear. It doesn't happen overnight. And Gordon, do I have more time here?
I think we're running out of time, Howard.
Okay.
I wish I could have given you. I do apologize.
I think you get the point here that we've been together an hour, and we've done basically all the way up to the fourth step. Let me give you the last one, the sex inventory. Let's do this one last, and then we could say we did all of the. I can't believe I can't find it now.
Or if anyone is willing to wait after the meeting, we can still carry on.
Anybody who wants to hang out after the meeting, I'll be glad to do that. Let me just finish up the fourth step inventory here for you. Last part of it is our sex inventory. So let me it's back to the 5-column grid, incidentally. It's the same thing as before. There it is. Okay. First thing to bear in mind, we don't list everybody we had a relationship with. That's not what we're doing here. Bill gives us criteria. He says we subjected each relationship to this test. Was it selfish or not? So we have to ask ourselves, did I engage in this activity for selfish reasons or not? The not would be reproduction and mutual pleasure. So if we engaged in it for some reason other than reproduction and mutual pleasure, it was selfish. The third column tells us the manifestations of pride. Did I get involved in this for reasons of pride, so I can boast about my conquest? Did I do it for reasons of self-esteem, so I could feel better about myself? Did I do it for reasons of control? I wanted to control somebody, and that was ambitions. Did I do it for reasons of security? And the fourth column is what feelings did it arouse in others? And then the fifth column is the same. What defect came out as a result of it? All very easy to do. All we have to do is follow the directions that Bill has in the book. And here we are, an hour and 10 or 15 minutes, and we're at the fifth step. Thank you all for giving me the time to do this. I'll be glad to hang around a little bit afterwards to finish up a bit more if you like. But thank you for indulging me. Gordon, thank you for inviting me.
Thank you, Howard. Thank you so much. Maya, keep
Thank
on.
you for putting up
The
with me.
meeting. Can we
you,
ask
Howard.
everybody to
Thank
unmute
you.
so
Howard,
thank you.
Fabulous.
thank you.
Thank you, Howard.
Oh, thank you,
Thank you
Howard.
so much, Howard.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Very enlightening. Thank you, Howard.
Thank you, Howard.
Thank you, Howard. Take care.
Thanks, Howard.
Excellent job, as always, buddy.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Howard. Always, always armed with the facts, and that's what we love. Always armed
Yeah.
with the facts and takes us right to, where we need to go. So that was
Thank you for
absolutely
helping us
brilliant.
to help others.
Absolutely. Thank you. So just a quick announcement from me. So on Saturday, we have a meeting at 7:30, slightly earlier. And the speaker on Saturday is the author of The Winner Takes All from the Big Book. She goes as the name of Gay. So she writes the story in the big book, The Winner Takes All. So she will be here on Wednesday. And then on Saturday, and then on Wednesday we have Bianca R from the Big Book Sponsorship Group in Pennsylvania. She's from Pennsylvania. So she'll be coming here to talk on step 1. So I think that is all from me. Again, massive thank you to Howard. Connie, over to you for chips. Thanks a lot.
Yeah. Hi, everybody. My name's Connie, and I'm an alcoholic. Howard, thank you so much for coming in today. I was busily writing. Wow, what a great share and taking us through the book like that. Howard, we'd like to thank our hosts for coming. How many years of sobriety have you got? Can you hear me?
Is he muted? No.
Sorry,
Oh.
I
Should
Oh.
be able to unmute himself.
Date of sobriety is May 2nd, 2006.
so that makes 2006.
Yes.
So that makes 17 years. Is that correct?
They didn't tell me there was going to be math on this test, so yes.
Did I get it right? Yeah.
Yes.
Check it out.
Yeah, check it out. Wow, what a great meeting. Thank you once again. Is there anyone else celebrating? Was there anyone celebrating 30 plus years today in the last week? Anyone celebrating 20 to 29 years? Anyone celebrating 10 to 19 years? Anyone celebrating 1 to 9 years in the past week? Now, I do know in the chat, is Ron still here? Ron, can you raise your digital hand? Is Ron here? He's celebrating 8 months. Is he still here? Oops, celebrating.
Yes. Woohoo! Woo doggy.
Wow, congratulations, Ron. Anyone celebrating 7 months, 6 months, 5 months, 1
Louise
to
has
4
got
months?
6 years.
Sorry, I can't see the hands.
Louise has got 6 years.
Louise has got
Louise
6,
Bino.
Yeah.
Louise is 6 years?
Yeah.
Okay.
Woohoo!
Wow, congratulations, Louise, on 6 years.
Rohan has got 2 months.
Who's got 2 months?
Rohan from
Rohan, 2 months. Congratulations.
Yeah!
I like that one. Anyone else celebrating?
Haj, 2 months.
Haj, 2 months?
Yeah.
Yeah!
Love that. And is there anyone here who would like, I think we had a couple to take a desire to stop drinking within their first 29 days. We had a couple of people in the beginning. Oh, hang on, before we get to that, we have B, Just B, celebrating 1 month. Is Just B
Wow,
still on?
beautiful.
Is she still on 30 days?
We give it to her. She may be around
Yeah.
in her memory.
Woohoo. And for those people that we had someone with 8 days and those were 2 people coming back. And for everybody else also, another 24 hours of sobriety.
Keep
Keep
coming
coming
back.
back.
Sorry,
Bonnie.
Connie, can we have one more? Denise for 7 months, please. Thank you.
Okay, Denise?
Yes, thank you very much.
Hip, hip, hooray. That's a good one.
Woohoo! Wow!
Okay, congratulations to all our birthdays and chip takers, and I'll pass it back to Maya. Thank you for allowing me to be of service.
Thank you, Connie. That was great, brilliant, and congratulations to everyone celebrating. I'm now want to hand the meeting back over to Howard. If you'd like to close the meeting in the usual way, and then whoever wants to stay behind can stay behind. Is that okay?
Any
Sure.
questions and answers?
Any questions?
And answers? How will do it after the meeting?
Sure.
Yeah.
What is your usual way? How do you close up?
A prayer of your choice, Howard. We give it to you. It's your day today.
My choice? Oh, great.
Yeah, yeah.
Oh, that's great. Terrific. And I'm going to read what's known as Ruth's Prayer. Ruth O'Neill is from Toms River, New Jersey. She passed away in April of 2012 at the age of 97 with 68 years of sobriety. This is the prayer she used to say at the end of every meeting. Thank you, dear God, for another day, the chance to live in a decent way, to feel again the joy of living and happiness that comes from giving. Thank you for friends who can understand and the peace that flows from your loving hand. Help me to wake with the morning sun, with the prayer today, thy will be done. For with your help, I will find the way. Thank you again, dear God, for AA.
Wow. Awesome.
Thank you
Absolutely.
so much, Howard. And if I can just get everyone to unmute. Ask all to unmute.
Thanks,
Thank
Howard.
you.
Thanks again,
Thank you,
Howard.
Howard.
Yeah, Howard, that was
Hey,
wonderful.
Howard, thank
Thanks,
you.
everyone.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank
Thank you.
Thank you,
Thank you,
Howard.
Gordon.
For a great
Any
meeting.
questions? Any questions? Any sharebacks? Please come on.
Wonderful,
Let's hear from you.
wonderful. Howard, George, if you know George H. from Toronto, he closes with Ruth's Prayer as well.
Does he?
Yeah.
Oh, I gotta make sure I get my residuals from that. I gotta.
Yeah. I love that prayer. I know. Wonderful job, buddy.
Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
I'm going to stay on.
And
Get Ruth's prayer.
Bye, Kat.
We had a prayer for the alcoholic. No one normally says it today.
The
I
Ruth,
remember them years. Yeah, prayer for the alcoholic
Ruth's
again.
prayer. That's the one that I'm after. So
I used to say that.
you did?
Yeah, in Mumbai, in India, we used to always say the prayer after the meeting. The prayer for the alcoholic. It's a beautiful prayer.
What prayer is this?
It's a prayer for the alcoholic.
Where does it come from?
It comes from from the States.
But from some book or someone wrote this or
All-
someone wrote a prayer?
every meeting, we had the same prayer said after the meeting.
Huh.
But I've got. I'll send it to you, Albert. I'll send it to you.
Yeah, I'd be curious to see what it is. I
It's
like
a beautiful
a little
prayer.
variety. Break it up with a different prayer every once in a while.
Yeah.
Howard,
I'll
it's
send it.
Kathy. Howard,
Yes.
there is a question in the chat. I think someone had a question. I don't know if it's for you or for the group.
But I'm a bit confused. I have a question. Our tradition says we go to help people who suffer from alcoholism. You only need to have a desire to start drinking. In that case, one is an alcoholic, and is an alcoholic. Response to this person will be exclusive prospect must qualify according to the speaker. No. No. I'm qualifying the speaker, the candidate for how I'm going to work with that person. If that person is, like I said, bleeding out, triage is most important. I'm not saying we make a decision and then don't do anything with some of those people. That's up to you. I'm not saying that I'm deciding who's an alcoholic or not. That's not my decision. That's their decision. But I mean, as long as if we're on this, the third tradition in the long form is really my favorite because it's a lot more succinct than the short version. The long version says, our membership ought to include all who suffer from alcoholism. Hence, we may refuse none who wish to recover, nor ought AA membership ever depend upon money or conformity. Any 2 or 3 alcoholics gathered together for sobriety may call themselves an AA group, provided as a group they have no other affiliation. So if the impression was created that I'm deciding if someone is an alcoholic or not necessarily. No, if they say they're an alcoholic, they're welcome here. That doesn't mean that I have to take them on as a sponsor. I want to sponsor the real alcoholic. That's all. And the person who comes to me and asks for that, to me, that's a good sign. You want to work the steps. You're not a don't drink, go to meetings person. But I have to qualify, what lengths are you willing to go to? So I don't know if that answers it or complicates it. There's another thing here. Is John Fraser still here?
Yep.
No.
John Fraser, no. We've got Bobette here from Philadelphia.
Okay.
Hi, I'm Bobette. I'm an alcoholic. And Howard, you probably have heard Charlie and Katie say that in the third step, and I don't know how you feel about this. You gave a beautiful rendition of the steps, so I don't want to clutter your presentation. But they say that the prayer is actually the second part of the third step. I don't know if you've ever considered this, but for your consideration, the first requirement, because I don't want to take credit for this, but the first requirement, which is on page 60, is not that we ask God, we go to God, but our first requirement is that we be convinced that any life run on self-will can hardly be a success. So I just wanted to put that out there for your consideration. Thank you.
Well, I don't disagree with that. But then what he does go on to do in the next few pages is to talk a little bit more about what does a life run on self-will look like. Okay, and then he gets to the prayer, the third step prayer. But I think there's